crazy fast giant steps or whatever, context. So yeah, doing all this practice on this lifelong journey that you get better and better despite the circumstances, that you're able to express yourself how you want to express yourself. The intention is there and you're able to say what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Welcome to Keep Taking Ground, the Saxophone podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ryan, and today's guest is an award-winning alto and soprano saxophonist, a band leader and educator. 4 of her 6 recordings as a leader and co-leader have been nominated for JUNO Awards for the Album of the Year in the traditional, solo, and group jazz categories. She's also a member of Ernesto Savini's Turbo Prop, which took home the JUNO Award for the 2020 Jazz Album of the Year group category. Tara Davidson, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Jesse. Really pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Great. I moved to Toronto just about 8 years ago. And quickly I realized that Toronto was not just a vibrant city for music, and particularly the music that I love. I was trying to learn jazz, but it was such a vibrant city for female musicians, and you were one of the people that I was quickly introduced to and fell in love with your playing and your music and your writing, and so it's a pleasure to have you here today on the podcast. As you know, the Keep Taking Ground podcast the intent is to create a resource for both the professional and aspiring saxophonists and help them to be inspired and empowered to keep taking ground in their own professional and creative journeys. But before we get into your journey, let's start at the very beginning. How did you begin to play the saxophone?
Ontario. I grew up in Ontario, and I got introduced, I guess, in grade 7. Some kids are lucky enough to get introduced to a band instrument in grade 5, but it was grade 7 for me.
Okay.
My dad was a high school music teacher in Aurora, Ontario, nice. And he was a trumpet player. And when it came time for me to pick a band instrument, he steered me away from brass because he was a brass player. I think maybe just, didn't want to muddy up the waters or whatever. So he thought I'd be a good woodwind player of some kind. Okay. So he brought the woodwind family instruments home for me to try, which was such a lucky thing for me to get that opportunity. I squeaked on the clarinet, almost passed out trying flute, and then saxophone, the alto saxophone, was an easy fit. Like, sound right away, felt good. Buttons make sense to me. Right. I don't think I would have ever done so well with like a stringed instrument, for example. They're very mysterious to me. So grade 7 band program, Ontario. Thanks. Wow. And then Dad giving me a bit of an advantage there by helping me choose the right instrument for me.
Wow, that's amazing. So from that point on, how instrumental was your dad in terms of like pushing you forward to pursue music or to go to the next step? What was next for you?
He was extremely supportive. I was really fortunate to have a dad who loved music at his core and also loved jazz. And so as I was doing pretty well with music in school, like I enjoyed it and was able to get, good enough grades. It was going well. he said, you know, maybe you should go try out for the arts program at Mayfield Secondary School, so that you can be, you know, at a high school where you get to play lots of music because you love it. And so he encouraged me to do that. And luckily I was able to go to Mayfield. It worked out that I was accepted to go there. And while I was in high school and getting to play, because Mayfield, you know, had an exceptional music program at the time and awesome teachers who I still, you know, think about today as a teacher now myself, good advice that I got from them and support, etc. I was getting to play some jazz, you know, while I was in high school in the jazz bands and stuff. And I wanted to improve upon my skills. I was getting more and more interested in jazz. And so my dad was also supportive of me pursuing lessons, like finding a really great private teacher for me to do that. And he was already familiar with the scene in Toronto because, as I said, he was a jazz lover. So he probably could have suggested teachers or just like taken me to someone if he could, you know, convince them to teach me. But instead, he left it up to me to decide who I wanted to study with. And I was playing in a community band at the time that had a really awesome, slightly older saxophonist in the group who happened to be female, and it's somebody I kind of looked up to. And she had lessons with Mikerley. You know, maybe I should get lessons too. She said, "Oh, well, call Mike. He's awesome." And so my dad took me to hear him perform at the Montreal Bistro, and I heard him play, and you know, was struck immediately by his amazing, beautiful tone on the instrument and melodicism. And it resonated with me, and I decided, like, he also seemed nice, so I don't think, I was probably too shy, I don't think I talked to him that night. But I got the courage to call him and ask, "Hey, can I have lessons?" I'm 15 and I like jazz and I play alto, and he said, "Okay."
That's amazing.
And so like about once a month, thereabouts, my dad would drive me from Brampton, which is where I grew up, to downtown Toronto, to Mikerley's house, and I'd get lessons with him.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so important to have mentors and people that you could learn from such an early age. And how did that experience, like studying with Mike, help you define what you were going to pursue in music? Like, let's try to let's define your ground. What are you in pursuit of?
Well, I have to say, like, seeing Mike Mikerley as a person first. Of course, like he's this awesome and like incredible award-winning Canadian gem of a saxophone player. But like he's a very nice person, and I, you know, going to his home once a month, got to see like, oh well, he has a home. He's doing okay. Like, oh okay, he's got a lovely home, and I, you know, saw the JUNO Awards on his shelves, and knew that he was, you know, teaching at U of T. I could see that he was making a living, and he seemed very happy. And so for me, I guess a practical person, saw like, well, he has a nice life. Maybe I can do this too, because I love music and I'd love to do this for a living, and it seems like a possibility. Obviously through a lot of hard work and many other factors, but it gave me the courage to try and give it a go. So that made me want to pursue further musical studies. I went to University of Toronto, and I wanted to stay close to home and study at a school that was ultimately in a place where I thought I'd want to live afterwards. And also Mikerley taught there, and some other amazing teachers, and just seemed like a good fit. So I went there. Through Mikerley, I also, as I said, like hearing him play for the first time, I was struck by his beautiful tone and melodic approach to melody. And, you know, through his language, you know, there's virtuosity there, but it's always has a stronghold on the melody first.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me, and that's something I consider and pursue as well. In my playing, lyricism, etc.
Yeah.
So he was a great role model for a lot of reasons.
It's so interesting that you mentioned a bit about just noticing Mikerleys, his personality, him being a good human being as well as a great musician, and then also having the awareness that, you could notice like he has a home, he looks like he's making a living from music. Because, from my experience and observation, a lot of people think about that later on. They get into music because they love it and they're passionate about it, and they might pursue a degree, and then when they're done, they have to think about life after college, with student debt, and then trying to be creative and all of that. So it's really interesting that from such a young age you had that awareness, and I think it's something that's, it's important to think about both sides.
Agreed. And as I said, I was a practical person, an older person in a younger person's body, I guess, in some ways back then. But also because my dad was real with me, and he said, if you want to pursue this, you're going to have to work really hard. It's not just about loving it. That's important. He felt and told me that, whatever you pursue in this life, that you do love it. That's really important. But it's going to take a lot of hard work. And, once I was clear with him that I was committed to that, he supported me 150%. So super fortunate. I mean, from the get-go, like there's a lot of factors in there in the early days that I recognized not everybody gets. And so it really gave me a head start, and I was super fortunate. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what are some of the things that you value as a saxophone player? I just want to go a little bit deeper in terms of like what you might be in pursuit of musically and creatively.
Yes, well, I never want to stop growing as a musician.
Yeah.
I want to keep evolving and improving and learning. And, I've heard other musicians say this, like Dick Oates has said, that, he hopes that he at about 60 now, like that he doesn't sound like Dick Oates at 50 or Dick Oates at 40, Oates at 30, etc. He's he hopes to keep evolving as well. I think that's a theme that most people would really agree that it is a priority. And while I was at U of T, I got to study with Phil Nimmons, who was one of the people who helped create the jazz program at U of T. And Canadian gem, jewel, treasure. And he talked about that too, that like this is a lifelong pursuit. It's a long road ahead of you, hopefully, right? If you keep pursuing and you stay with it. But that's also something that's extraordinarily beautiful about it, is that you can continue with a focus towards improvement and hard work and evolution, that you can be on this lifelong journey where there's tons of change and growing pains along the way. It's not always fun. It's not. Sometimes it's really hard, and you go through plateaus where you're frustrated with your own playing or some aspects of musicianship. But you fight through those. You make friends with those growing pains, accept them, and continue to just work, and hopefully when you do look back at your younger self, that you're still happy with what you hear, but that you also can acknowledge and recognize growth.
Right. I think that concept is one that I've heard echo so many times. I think Miles Davis has a quote about that too. him intentionally not playing any of the repertoire from his old albums and moving on to new stuff. I'd love to go a little bit deeper with that idea of evolving and never stopping that lifelong pursuit of learning and evolving towards a specific goal. What would you say is like the ultimate goal? What are you moving towards? What are you trying to evolve towards?
I hope to be able to develop and gain greater access to clarity of expression. I want to be able to, of course, I have to develop my own voice and my own language and my own approach to the instrument. I think it's imperative to maintain connection to the emotional element, you know, the musicality, the emotion behind the music, or it coming from me. That's important because we can focus on being technicians so much, but ultimately you want to touch the listener, you know, you want to reach their heart, not just their minds. So yeah, clarity of expression, that I can, when I'm on that bandstand and I'm playing with my band, that I'm able to react and interact and access my language in the moment, that it's there, it's flowing. I think that's like accessing the flow is also a huge part of the pursuit, because I think our flow, when we have a mind towards developing that and staying connected to that and allowing it to happen through all the practicing that you're doing, that also plays into the clarity of expression powers.
So that was great. I would you say that like clarity of expression, based on what you said, is like the ability to use your language despite the tempo or the tune, to say what you want to say through your instrument when you want to say it with clarity. And it's not just about the technical aspect, but also like having like emotive intention and power.
That is a very good synopsis. Yes, that's a clear way to say it. Exactly. Yeah, I think because there's so much to work on always, right? Tempos and harmony and even the intensity. Right? Like, are you playing with a really high energy band? Is it really chill? Are you playing a ballad? Are you playing, you know, crazy fast giant steps or whatever, you know, context. So doing all this practice on this lifelong journey, that you get better and better despite the circumstances, that you're able to express yourself how you want to express yourself. The intention is there and you're able to say what you want to say and how you want to say it. It's a lot.
So going back to this idea of evolving, and what are some ways you think you have evolved over time, both musically, professionally, creatively, you know?
I think my sound on the instrument, it still sounds like me, but I've been focused on for like the last decade-ish, I guess. Developing my tones so that I can be a little more versatile. In that, like when I first began, and this is there's gear behind this too. We can make changes and talk about that all day, but it's also just how we hear sound and how to access that. And I started off as like having a dark contained, I think it was warm, hopefully, but like a darker alto sound. And that was influenced by like secretly wanting to be a tenor player, actually. And like if we rewind back to when I was picking instruments and my dad brought those instruments home, like I wanted to play tenor, but I had to walk to school and carry the gigantic instrument. Like, so my dad said, "You're gonna hurt, like it's gonna be so much for you to carry a tenor, so try the alto." And I was happy with alto, but like secretly wanted to play tenor. And so yeah, like Mikerley, Sonny Rollins, Coltrane, Joshua Redman. You know, I was really, really intensely interested in tenor players earlier on, and I think that influenced my sound. So I started off the journey with a much darker sound, which was great for example, like playing second alto in a big band. You know, I feel like I developed and did fairly well as the wing person to the lead alto saxophonist, so that I got in there and blended and supported and worked on that quite a lot. I got that opportunity and my sound was good for that. As years went on, I wanted to be able to play lead, and it's a whole other thing, and your sound can really help you. So a brighter, bigger, more direct sound can really facilitate that, being in that chair, the first chair. So that's something I started getting more focused on. And then you did mention at the intro about Ernesto Cervini's band Turboprop. And I'm so thankful that Ernesto asked me to play in that band with him. The front line is three horns, myself on alto and soprano, my husband William Karn on trombone, and Joel Fromm on tenor saxophone. And just so I'm kind of in the lead chair. It's just three of us, but Joel has a gorgeous big sound, and he can play brightly as well if he wants, and I recognized I needed to develop the power. My honestly, a little bit of athleticism needed to be developed, so that I could carry that music in that three horn section, and be strong enough. And so developing a brighter tone, developing athleticism on the instrument a little bit, just trying to get stronger. So working on dynamic spectrum that I could really push the fortissimo end of the spectrum, not just and comfortably, right? And still staying in tune and all these things. This is a long answer, Jesse, but
no, it's good. It's good. It's good.
So I know I feel pretty confident in saying, it's hard to judge oneself, I feel, but I feel like, yes, my tone and just overall strength on the instrument has improved, and it's knowing that I needed to adapt as well.
Right.
So I could play the role.
I was just gonna say, you started talking about, having a darker sound, and that was coming from a concept that you had in your head. Or that's the way you were hearing the saxophone, and then your intention evolved because your awareness evolved as well as what was possible on saxophone, but then also you adapted to the musical situations you needed to. And so I guess the idea of adaptation, of becoming aware, adapting, and then having intention was some of the key things that helped you to evolve over time. And then you use like technique and saxophone setup to facilitate those intentions.
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm thankful for that turboprop. It's pushed me in a lot of ways. And as I said about early days and listening to so many tenor players, and I still do, of course, but along the way also, as I was, intentions were shifting and awareness was shifting, I started listening to different alto players as well and falling in love with different alto players sounds, such as Miguel, Zenon, and Dicots, and just sort of also like feeling the love a little more for Parker and Cannonball and all the greats. But certainly some of the more modern contemporary saxophonists really ignited my interest in how I might shape my own sound as I was trying to evolve. So
yeah, that's amazing. So as you continue to evolve and continue to this lifelong journey and pursuit of clarity of expression on your instrument, how do you work on that, or how have you worked on it?
Well, the umbrella is wide, right? Like all the things we can practice, and the mountain of work ahead of us is vast. So little by little, I prioritize allowing myself some exploration, I should say, like on the instrument, exploration and connection to my sound at the front of my practice session all the time. That's something Dick Oates has talked about too. The idea of stretching,
right?
But also connecting to your own voice before you get into the nitty gritty of, okay, let's play some scales, or let's play some time, etc. So, so I keep in mind to explore, connect to the sound, and many facets of working on sound that I try to develop in terms of dynamic spectrum, endurance, tuning, and then working on language. So I've made friends with transcribing more as I've gotten older. It's of course imperative. None of us should try to escape it. It's imperative. So I've dedicated a lot more time in the last couple decades towards transcribing than I did in the earlier years. And it's not just about like learning the language through other people saying it. It's about how we absorb that language and also adopt it and adapt it to become part of our own language and how we want to express that language. So when I transcribe, then I take pieces of the language and dissect it to understand how the phrase, let's call it a lick, how the lick relates to the harmony in context of the song or in the solo. And then before I worry about manipulation, like, so I take it through 12 keys, of course, considering like the harmony, that's the relevant harmony. And then, say it is like a minor 2/5 lick. Then I think it's imperative then that we work on the application of that language into a more real context. So practicing it over a tune, over the relevant harmony. Application, get the tempos happening, any tempo, any key. It's going to start to get under our fingers, right? It's in our ears, and it's going to start to actually get under our fingers. And then it becomes about the manipulation, adaptation, exploration of that lick and how it's constructed and how we can personalize it. So that we're not lick machines and regurgitating other people's stuff, right? That's not the goal. That's we're all inspired by everything else going on around us and that we're listening to, but we don't want to regurgitate. So working on the manipulation of that language, and then again, application, 12 keys, and put it in a tune, try to access it. So like that clarity of expression thing, it's about a lot about the accessibility of what you want to say in the moment. So as you're trying to develop your language, like you need to be practicing that application, because that's part of the accessibility
right
factor behind it. And then also composition of my own language. So same concept. If it's a 2/5 lick, then I'm going to write a lick over the 2/5s, perhaps inspired by a couple other licks that I've been working on. But how are those licks constructed? What did I like about them? How they were using the altered extensions over the dominant, whatever it may be. Then I try to create my own line. Inspired by the other piece, and then again, 12 keys and tempos, and put it into a tune, and I mean, piece by piece, right? But that's just one thing. That's just talking about language. I mean, there's technique in there too, and if you're working on tempos, and maybe you're even gonna change the time signature too, like it's kind of endless, right?
You know, when we had a chance to get into this a little bit, and one of the things that kind of came out is the idea of creating a specific exercises that helps you to evolve from where you're currently at towards a specific goal. And do you have something that you can share with us right now that kind of demonstrates that idea of something that you work on to help you work on clarity of expression by creating a specific exercise,
A specific exercise? I mean, I know we were talking about, for example, like it's all in there, but recognizing one's habits, right? Like what are little tics or habits are that we go to, like, and that's kind of when we are just allowing ourselves to play, but there might be a bit of like automatic pilot factor happening, as opposed to true improvisation in the moment. You're sort of leaning on muscle memory and sort of what feels good, what's in there. So being aware of one's habits and forming exercises to fight against those habits, to get yourself out of the habit, the habitual box. So for example, if you're, you got to record yourself. I find it pretty painful, honestly. I don't want to do it, but we have to do it. So, play over a tune mindfully, record yourself, and then listen back and try to hone in on perhaps the habitual elements, such as perhaps you're starting a lot of your phrases on the end of 3. Perhaps you're getting, perhaps many of your phrases are 3.5 bars in length.
The phrase length.
Length of phrasing, placement of those phrases, in, entries and exits, dismounts or whatever, and then creating exercises to fight those. So, I'm doing, my entries into my phrases are happening a lot on this beat. Okay, great. Well, I'm gonna work on phrases that are 5 bars in length, and I'm coming in on the end of 1. I'm coming in on the end of 2. I'm apparently fine with the end of 3, so leave that alone. End of 4, etc. And I mean, that's just looking at 8th notes. It's not looking at triplets. It's not looking at 16ths. It's again, like you can dissect it. So yeah, creating little templates for yourself, and then progressively allowing that to shift and look a little different. So that's a very regimented, organized, exhaustive perhaps, but again, necessary if you wish. You can take anything like to the nth degree, right? Like
definitely
work anything into the ground. So that's like a really formatted way. But then I also I just allow myself to explore concepts in a very open format, which for me, for a while, has been drones, working with drones. Yeah.